Our story kicks off with James, our main guy, getting nabbed by the cops. Freshly landed in this joint, he gets into it with some other dude who mouths off at him. The guards jump in real quick, used to dealing with cons who think they're untouchable. James doesn't spill the beans when they ask him stuff, so one of the screws cracks him across the face with a baton. Then, this other con gives James some advice. Acting tough as a new fish only gets you more heat from the bulls. Flashback to 3 years back when a 14-year-old James rolls up to his new school with his mom, Tracy. He's all jittery about fitting in, but his mom's like, "It'll be fine." Thing is, James is rocking an ankle monitor. The principal is not willing to accept it. James's record is noticeably different from the other students' records. At just 14, he's already got a rap sheet for wrecking stuff and throwing hands. Dude's been in lockup 3 times by age 8. Even threatened his girl with a blade when he was just 10. Tracy pushes hard for James to get into the public school, saying he meets all their criteria. She leaves, saying they can't just turn him away. The next morning, she reminds James to take it easy. He's been keeping his nose clean for the past 3 months. They've got to let his lawyer sort the case, and James should lay low at home to avoid any more trouble. James eventually gets the green light to attend school. When his mom wakes him for the bus before heading to work, James decides to ditch it to steer clear of socializing. They're out of milk for breakfast, and despite his mom's advice, James heads to the store where he runs into a crew of teens lifting stuff. He hesitates, but the peer pressure pushes him to split with them. They even offer him some drugs. A few hours later, James explains he's got to be home by 8 p.m. or else an alarm will go off on his parole officer's computer. The kids ask about his ankle monitor, and James tells them it's from when he brought a gun home that his mom found stashed in his sock drawer, ended up doing 15 months in juvie. Back in the present-day prison yard, James and his crew spot Chris, a new guy, getting hassled by William's gang. Against potential consequences, James steps in to intervene. The guards get ready to shut down any violence. When things look like they're about to blow up, a guard fires a rubber bullet at William. After sorting out William's crew, a lieutenant tells James that in just 3 weeks, he's lost count of how many fights he's been in. At first, he thought James was after respect because he looks young, but now he thinks James just likes to throw down. Chris insists James was only sticking up for him, but the lieutenant says that's not the real story. In a continuation of the past timeline, James's new buddies take him to Maria, a shy girl who's easily swayed by them. After knocking back some booze, courtesy of Maria, Crystal asks James to dance. Then the crew announces they're going to swipe jewelry from Maria's mom's room. That night, James's mom finds liquor bottles hidden in his bed while tidying his room. Furious, she warns him that the officer can search his room anytime and will send him back to juvie if he finds those bottles. She asks about school and tells him the judge is about to hear his appeal. James responds that he's been cooped up at home for 2 months, and they're still struggling. He's tired of being a charity case and doesn't even want to keep studying. Then he blames his mom for his dad leaving. Tracy loses it and tells him she doesn't care anymore, that from now on, she won't care if he ruins his life with immature choices. In the next scene, we see James cutting off his ankle monitor. Back in the present at the jail, the guards take the inmates to the showers, and William seizes the chance to attack James with a blade. Thanks to Chris's warning, James defends himself. Then William's buddies stab Chris for warning him. When the riot squad arrives, James is taken to the lieutenant, who tells him the stabbed inmate is in critical condition. He has no violence on his record. James needs to ID the attackers, but he refuses to snitch. The lieutenant warns him that William's friends will testify against him and claim the weapon is his. His code of honor means nothing. As he keeps refusing to answer, he's punished with solitary confinement. Back to the past storyline, James decides to visit the mobster Rock to ask for jobs. Rock calls Crystal, who shows up in her underwear. He asks about James, but she claims to barely know him. Rock tells James he doesn't employ kids. He asks the youngster to leave, but James refuses to budge. The mobster gets in his face, pressing a gun to his gut to gauge his nerve. Seeing the kid doesn't flinch, he says maybe James can run some errands. When James talks to his mother, she lets him know cops come around looking for him daily. He got expelled for skipping school. James declares he won't return to his old life. He'll make his own path now. A few hours later, the crew sets out to knock over another outfit's operation for a quick heist. James just needs to sit tight in the idling getaway car. After some time, James spots a guy approaching the building, so he heads inside to help. Finding the crew in dire straits, he manages to save their skins using a frying pan. The mobster implores his rattled associate to snap to it. Stepping up, James grabs the gun and scores. Back in the car, the boss welcomes James to the mafia crew. They celebrate at a nightclub where the chief gifts James half the take. He also sets James up to hook up with a girl for his first time. At a later bash, Crystal tries putting moves on James. The two end up in an intense entanglement. In the morning, the lovebirds stop to grab smokes. The cashier says James can keep the packs, anxious to avoid duress. James insists they aren't robbing the place. A jealous Crystal plants a kiss on him for the clerk to see. In the parking lot, James tears off blowing lights, heedless of consequences. Crystal chews him out, saying they need to draw zero attention from the law. If cops find their stash, they'll go away for a decade. Cocksure, James boasts of invincibility, getting Crystal turned on. James contends he's made the outfit major money, so the boss ought to entrust him with more responsibility. Privately, James pitches the head honcho ideas for enterprises he could helm alone. But the mobster says James should stick to small-time jobs for now. Changing topics, Rock congratulates James for shacking up with Crystal, a girl notorious for sleeping around. When James spots his lady dirty dancing with a stranger, his whole demeanor shifts. In the present day, James finishes a stint in solitary and returns to his cell. Midnight awakens him from a nightmare, conjuring memories of the shower assault. He grabs his mirror, trying to hit up the new inmate next door doing time for serious felonies. Conrad firmly rejects befriending other cons. Come morning, James's prison mates warn about a potential surprise attack from Guillermo's outfit. James could care less what the rival crew is plotting. He finds it odd no one tests Conrad, though. The fellows caution James that Conrad's reputed to be extremely dangerous. No one dares cross him. As the guards march them back to their cells, James peeps Conrad's papers and asks if he's mapping a breakout. Conrad replies he's not looking to converse. The next day, James again attempts to make small talk, but Conrad tells him to zip it. In the exercise yard, James asks Conrad if he can assist with an escape plan. Returning to their cells, Conrad finally engages James. James informs Conrad that a kid was badly shanked in a shower scuffle. He's resolved to retaliate somehow. Conrad argues instigating a war in the yard is an easy path to never again see the light of day. Maybe that's what secretly spooks James. James insists he feels no fear. Conrad says he can discern in James' eyes that he thinks himself distinct from the other inmates. Yet in truth, James's mind works just like theirs. Out of the blue one day, James gets a visit from Mom. She endeavors to stifle her sobs, to keep composure. But beholding her son's grim circumstance makes her come undone in tears. James feels guilty about what went down, but hopes things will get better. Trying to distract himself, he turns to writing poems, an activity he continues even out in the rec yard, keeping separate from his crew. The next morning, James approaches Conrad and hands over one of his scribblings. Conrad pores over it before asking why he cares about Conrad's opinion. James wants to know if the rumors are true that Conrad has iced 5 people. Conrad stands and talks of Rio de Janeiro's Christ the Redeemer statue. He advises James to keep writing on any theme, no matter what. The important thing is that scribbling helps James tune out the world. Taking the advice, James starts drafting verses about life behind bars. Sometime later, Chris recovers from his shanking, and the guards bring him out to the yard. James comes over to buoy his spirits. Chris needs to put on a tough front. Chris pulls out a letter and passes it over. It's his girl giving him the axe. She was Chris's sole reason to keep grinding. James shares a similar story. He was once gaga for a chick, but after getting locked up, she vanished. Chris feels gutted, but James says to hang in there. He'll have a new girl when he makes it out. In a flashback, James and another thug storm an office to grab cash. The owner whips out a revolver. James jams his gun in the man's face, demanding money, but the dude claims they don't keep cash around. James pops off a round into a lamp to rattle him. Just then, the club's security burst in to neutralize the pair. Outside, James smashes the owner's car window, and they come up on a bag of guns, which they snag. Later, James goes to Crystal's place, and she criticizes his poor choices. If he wants to be like his boss, he needs more cunning. James boasts he's on the cusp of manhood, but she mocks him as a boy chasing props. Incensed, James spits back that to the crew she's just a plaything. James then rolls up on Sarah's shop to grab beers. Finding the fridge locked, he shouts at her pointlessly. He soon simmers down and apologizes. They end up chatting about their lives. Sarah asks after the girl from his last visit. James says her name's Crystal. James' boss Rock confronts him for causing problems by jacking that bag of guns and stashing them at his place. Rock thought James was smarter than that. He demands James fix this mess. The next day, James returns to Sarah's shop. Since her dad works there, she decides to step out to walk with James. She shares that her mom is ill, and they used to take strolls together when Sarah was a kid. James reveals he's had it rough since very young, never attending a normal school. Sarah brings James to her place to catch a flick. Meanwhile, we see Crystal making out with another dude. Elsewhere, James talks to the warden about safeguarding Chris from the gangbangers. The warden says if James wants to help, he'll need to give up names of the cons that jumped them. James refuses to snitch on the attack. He's already sticking his neck out just sitting here with the man, and Guillermo may retaliate. Guillermo rolls up in the yard to tell James he knows about his chat with the warden. If James mentions Guillermo by name or any of his boys, he'll make sure James gets his throat slit. James steps to the dude, ready to throw down, but thinks better of it for now and blows him off. At the hearing, Chris shows up battered from the shower brawl. He gets slammed with another 6 years, crushing any hope of a normal life again. In a flashback, Sarah introduces James to her schoolmates. The kids invite James to play ball, and he proves clutch at hoops, a skill he honed in reform school. As James spends more time with Sarah, he promises to shelter her from harm's way. He doesn't want to drag her into his troubles. Things are looking up, it seems. Hours later, though, James returns to Crystal's to grab his stuff, finding her there to intervene. She's already learned about his thing with the shop girl. James is just a pathetic child. He'll never land a woman Crystal's caliber again. Last night, she even slept with her boss. James avoids a blowout and walks without a word. Exiting outside, Rock appears saying they found a buyer for those arms. James will broker the deal himself tonight. It's his penance for disloyalty. James owes all he has to Rock, but he squandered his opportunity by joining the crew. As the guards march them from their cells, Chris ties his bedsheet to the bars, looking to check out for good. James spots this and tries intervening, unlike the COs who just stand watching. They even restrain James from assisting. Helpless, James is forced to watch his buddy die. To make matters worse, the warden punishes James. He charges at Guillermo, seeking payback. The guards neutralize James, hauling him into solitary. Resuming the deal, James meets with the crew to unload the guns. Noticing sketchy behavior from the buyers, he draws his pistol, demanding to peep the cash. His associate talks him down, lowering the piece. The crooks say chill, the money's in their ride. But stashing the bag in their trunk, they whip out gats and blast everyone. Tossing the take in their whip, they peel off, but the crew returns fire, hitting them. Securing the score back, cop sirens blare in the distance. They bolt to hide out. Drew says their papers got left in the other ride. They'll need to skip town and lay low now. The duo split up, James heading to his boss's place to find the gang all getting booked. He races over, urging Sarah to blow town with him. He begs her to meet him somewhere far away where no one knows them. Sarah says she can't leave her family. James tells her she's all he has left. But Sarah apologies in tears, saying she can't go through with it. In the present, the committee grills the warden on events leading to the inmate's death. The guy got shanked in the showers by a crude homemade shiv. He had no prior beefs. James was on the scene when it occurred. Plus, 2 weeks back, James caught another case at roll call. He's constantly sparking clashes. The board asks if the warden has anything to add. He replies, "There's nothing further." On the yard, James plays ball against another inmate, who starts shoving to gain an edge, inciting friction. The hacks step in, threatening the con to back off. Conrad tells James to chill. He has a review tomorrow. Further tiffs will just deny him. James insists they'll likely reject him anyway. No hope left. Conrad says James still has a chance for freedom if he can convince one member with his words. He urges James not to squander this opportunity over pride. His actions resemble a boy hungering for respect. That road just leads to a casket. At his review hearing, James comes clean, accounting for all his actions in and out of lockup. He regrets most choices, yet still can't explain why. If that means another 5 to 6 years inside, so be it. He'll carry it always, though more than anything, he wishes for one more chance. To James's shock, the board grants parole. Before James departs, Conrad vows he'll end James if he returns, warning him to walk the line out there. In the next scene, we witness James's actual bust. Crystal tipped off the cops to lighten her time. Freed, James eagerly hugs his family. In time, James gets a shop cleanup gig, steering clear of gang nonsense, until one old running buddy tempts him back for a couple jobs. Though initially declining, the money ultimately seduces James. Stashing the product in his room, he unearths the cig packs from that cashier long ago. He goes to thank her, but finds the shop gone. Tracking the girl's address, Sarah embraces James after ages apart. She shares she's engaged to a janitor now. Apologizing for not visiting James locked down, Sarah says she made the right move. Inside, James found poetry, an outlet to mentally escape walls. Though free, something still tugs him sideways. Figuring a fresh start elsewhere, James plans to skip to New York City. But cash falls short to bankroll this flip. Sarah urges James to share some verses. Recounting his criminal life, we see James return the goods, refusing relapse. Grinding his wage job over time, he continues saving up for an NYC ticket.